Hi, everyone. Joe Kehrig, managing broker of Coldwell Banker Real Estate in Danville. And this is your San Ramon Valley update for the week of November 9th. Well, the election is over. Maybe. who knows? But it looks like it might be over. And how is it going to affect the real estate market? That's the question I've probably gotten about 25 times in the last week. As I've mentioned before, the real estate market right now is so strong in that price range from $1 million to $2 million right now. I mean, it's absolutely nuts. It has. You'll see with the graphs this week. It has leveled out a little bit. So people ask, where does the market go from here? Well, I can tell you right now that this market is so strong that the presidential race, at least in the short term, is not going to slow down this market. Because what you really have is you have what's driving this market is all supply and demand. Well, you know what? We're not adding to the supply. It's not like a builder's going to build 5,000 new homes. The interest rates are predicted to be as low as they are for another couple years, according to the Federal Reserve. And for that reason, the demand's really high. Now, obviously, at some point, there might be some, because we basically know what we were getting the last 4 years. If, Trump wins or would have won, we basically know what was down the line. With the Democratic Party and President-elect Biden, we really don't know because there's a lot of infighting, with that party. And there are certainly, like President-elect Biden talking about, a couple months ago he came out and said he wanted to get rid of tax-deferred exchanges if you made over $400,000. Obviously, there's been a push in the past from the Democratic Party to reduce the mortgage deduction, which, years and years ago, it was reduced to $1 million. And I remember the National Association of Realtors fought that. And the reason that they fought it was not that many people had $1 million mortgage back then, but they didn't want to open that door that someone could just keep walking through. Well, 2 years ago during the SALT Act, it was reduced from $1 million to $500,000 up to the day or so before it passed. Matter of fact, when it passed, people thought the mortgage deduction had been moved down to $500,000, but at the last minute it was negotiated out, so it ended up being $750,000. So they did go back to that well, move the mortgage deduction from $1 million to $750,000, and there is a fringe part of the Democratic Party that wants to do with mortgages or the write-off of mortgage deduction completely. And you would wonder, you sit there and go, because I always try to look at both sides, because obviously the first reaction, well, why would you want to do that? Because home ownership is so important and it's kind of the backbone of the country. But their mindset, I don't agree with it, but you try to look at what their mindset is. Their mindset is the fact that, if you own a home, you're potentially rich. And the people who are renting that can't afford the home, aren't able to write off their rent, but yet you can write off your interest. So they look at it as, on the really fringe part, they look at it as an entitlement to the rich or the people that can afford homes, where renters cannot write off their rent. I don't agree with that, but at the same point, I try to look for, where they're coming from. So there could be changes down the line, but there is nothing political that's going to change this real estate market or slow down this real estate market right now, except, I've talked about before that this is the longest bull run, 10 years, that we've seen with prices going up. So the sensible part of me sits there and says, okay, well, it's got to slow down or it's got to correct. But then you look at it, and because of lack of supply and great demand because of interest rates, what is really going to slow it down? It's really nothing in sight. Except the one thing that I think that could slow this market down a little bit. I mean, it's already starting to level out, you'll see in the graphs. But what could slow this market down is COVID-19. And they've already this week, Contra Costa County has gone back in the red. So the parameters have obviously tightened down. And, not that it's going to affect it overnight, but there's ripple effects eventually. Now, the reason the COVID-19 didn't really hurt the real estate market that much in the Bay Area, because 60% of the people that were laid off, over 60%, were service workers, hotel workers, restaurant workers. And the unfortunate fact of living in the Bay Area is the restaurant workers and the service industry are not the people that are buying our average $1 million plus, starter homes. So the real estate market really hasn't been affected, that much. It maybe kept a couple people from purchasing, but the bottom line is with the people coming from the peninsula, from San Francisco, that are in their tiny, I mentioned a couple weeks ago, we showed some people that lived on the 55th floor of one of the new high rises in San Francisco, and they had a 1,500 square foot condo that was worth close to $3 million. And they just found out, one from Google, the other one works in the financial industry, that they wouldn't be coming back to work, physically for another year plus. So they decided, okay, let's go out to the suburbs. So we're still getting a lot of that. We're getting a lot of people that are in condo townhouses that need more space, because now you need 1 or 2 home offices. You need a room dedicated to school, a Zoom room or whatever. So that's why that $1 million to $2 million market is so hot. But, with the clamping down of the COVID-19 requirements, as they become stricter and stricter, there are ripples effect that will happen. People will continue to be put out of business. And like we have a ton of clients that are basically saying, hey, I'm kind of done with this, and I'm going to Texas or Nevada to Idaho, just to get out of California, because they feel, California is almost, as one of my clients said the other day, almost like a dictatorship with Governor Newsom. Now, I'm not saying that. I have my own thoughts and my own ideas, but I don't express them here. I just kind of give you guys the facts. So I think that could affect the market prior to anything else. But right now, the market is still super strong. Let's take a look at it. Let's look in San Ramon. And this is where you'll see that I talk about the market leveling off a little bit. You see that the pending sales are down a little bit and actives are up. But again, there was a lot more closings last week. So the pendings are staying pretty consistent and the actives are staying pretty consistent. See, people talk about a lack of inventory. But what happens is when you have pending sales going up like this and inventory going down, that's what we worry about, because obviously there's nothing to buy. But when you look at what's happened the last 4 or 5 weeks, what's been happening, and you look at the market has kind of stabilized. So even though people go, God, there's no inventory, but yet we're still selling more homes than we have in any recent years. So obviously there's inventory coming on for us to sell that many homes. Otherwise there'd be no homes on the market. But there's as much, now we're at the point where there's as many homes coming on the market as are selling. Let's take a look at Danville. You can see that. Again, pendings are down just a little bit, but again, the sold properties, the sold properties last week went up a little bit. So the pending sales are pretty consistent. And you can see active has stayed pretty consistent. So what you really have is the fact that as inventory comes on the market, it's selling. And we've seen that now for a few weeks. So yeah, it still is a seller's market. Anytime you have a lot more pending sales than active properties, it's a seller's market. But at least we're starting to see a stabilization where as many homes that are coming on the market are selling. If we look at Blackhawk, same type of thing. You saw the pending sales obviously went down. But one of the reasons that the pending sales are going down in Blackhawk is 3 weeks ago, the average price of the home sold in Blackhawk was 1.5, 1.5, 1.6 million. And so a lot of that inventory got burnt off. So last week, the average price of the pending sale was over $2 million. So that's one reason the pending sales have gone down, because basically all the low fruit on the tree has been picked off. And you see that obviously there's still a lot more active properties. But one thing to remember, which is amazing, is the average price of the active listings in Blackhawk is $3.6 million. Now, Those numbers are a little bit thrown off in the fact that you might have a home listed for 12 million, another one for 8 million, and so it throws it off a little bit. But the bottom line is you're seeing that average price in Blackhawk. You're seeing the average price in Blackhawk obviously go up. One of the things that is surprising with Blackhawk is that $2.5 million market has always just kind of lagged for years and years and years. Matter of fact, a few years ago, we sold a home in Blackhawk for 2.450, and in 1997, the person bought the home for 2.450. So it sold for about 2.5 million, same price it did 20 years ago. So that market has been very stagnated. Well, with the increases in prices and the strength of the market, we just recently closed 2 homes in Blackhawk. One was listed at 2.4, and our clients had to pay 2.6 to get the property. The other one was listed at 2.8, and our clients had to pay almost $3 million to get the property. We haven't seen, homes in Blackhawk at 2.5 million basically going for over asking. Very, very rare. But now, if it's a nice listing, that's almost a little bit consistent. Because what you'll have is when the market goes up, it starts from the bottom and then it obviously rises. So it's been getting, it was 1 million, then 1.5 million, then 1.8 million, 2 million, now even at 2.5 million in Blackhawk. So the Blackhawk market is incredibly strong. There just isn't that much low inventory price-wise to sell. That's why you see the pending sales down. In Alamo, you'll see also some consistency. Obviously, pending sales up just a little bit, but again, when you look at the closed one less, those have been basically almost even the last 3 weeks, the pending sales. Now, you did see the active properties go down a little bit, but not a lot. For the most part, they're staying consistent. Now, again, a really strong market, and people go, well, Joe, there's a lot more active than pendings. But again, you got to remember the average sale in Alamo is over $2 million. So there is a big difference when you get into the higher price range. But Alamo is still a very active market, especially the hottest market in Alamo is West Side. Everyone kind of wants West Side, and people are doing a lot of tear downs. Investors are going in and building $3.5 million homes, and that's a hot market right now. And on the other side of the coin, you look at Dublin. Dublin, you can see, has been pretty consistent. You'll sit there and go, well, there's less pendings. But again, look at the solds. There were a lot more properties closed. So those pending sales have stayed pretty consistent. And look at the inventory stayed pretty consistent. So that shows you, even though pending sales are very strong, the backfill of the active listings are keeping up with the pending sales. And the reason that, there's so many more pending properties than active properties is because the average price in Dublin is about $1 million. So obviously, the lower you go down in price range, the more buyers that you have. So when you look at the stats, same thing when you look at like the last 2 weeks, everything's selling for 100% of asking or more, except for obviously Blackhawk. But again, the average sale in Blackhawk is over $2 million. But you can see even going past the 3 weeks. Bottom line is the homes that are selling are the ones that are the best value. There's obviously homes that are staying on the market 30, 60 days. But most homes, when you see them selling at 100% of asking or more, are basically on the market, for a week. So, anyway, that's your weekly update. The one, thing that we see is what I think a good sign is the market starting to level. So even though it still is a seller's market, you're seeing as many listings come on the market as selling. So that's obviously a good thing. The other thing, there are opportunities in the market. As I mentioned a couple weeks ago, because people are looking for more bedrooms, space in their backyard, that $1.5 million to $2 million price range has gone up hundreds of thousands of dollars, just in the last, couple months. But yet, as I mentioned, my son sold a townhouse in San Ramon 3 years ago for $600,000, and one of those just sold for $630,000. So the used to be able to buy 2 condo townhouses for the price of a single family home. Now you can buy 3 condo townhouses for the price of a single family home. So that lower end market is not moving. Well, it's selling, but the problem is Number one, it doesn't give people, because most of those are 2-bedroom places. Most of them have a patio, if you're lucky, for a yard. And so that's not what people are looking for right now coming from the cities. That's what they're coming from. So they want to spread out a little bit. And then the people that already own those are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to get up into the single family home with the more expansive yards. So you have less demand for those and you have more inventory. That's why that market is staying flat. Now, at some point, if the single family home market continues to go up and price people out, they'll drop by to the condo townhouses. So if you know someone who is renting or looking to purchase their first home, there's some great programs out there. You can give us a call. There's some great programs with 3% down that people can get in, and even at 3% down, they will save $500 to $1,000 a month over what they're renting right now, renting for, and they can own their own place. And that doesn't even count, the potential tax write-off, which, thank God we still have now, and hopefully we'll, have it the next 4 years. So anyway, but if you want a referral to a great lender, or you have any other questions, please feel free to give me a call. Again, Joe Kehrig, 925-487-6838, or joe.kehrig@cbrealty.com. Again, managing broker, Coldwell Banker, real estate in Danville. And as always, COVID, cases are ticking up, which it's going to happen, because as we start opening up our society a little bit, the COVID cases are going to happen. Any death, even if there's one, is a tragedy. And so we're still, even though the death count is lower, hospitalizations are lower, and cases are up, it's easy to sit there and say, well, that's a good sign. But how can it be a good sign when people are still dying? So you got to be respectful out there, as far as, social distancing and keeping their mask. But to a certain extent, we have to self-govern ourselves and make sure that we're being careful and following, the guidelines. Because it never works well when the government's trying to, discipline us from that standpoint, because people will tend to fight back a little bit. But there's still some unrest in the country. There's still obviously some of this election that has to go through. So I pray for our country, that our country can heal through all this. But most importantly, may God bless you, may God bless your family, and may God bless the United States of America. Thanks. See you next week. Have a great one.